Welcome everyone to our 2020 wine country tours during the pandemic. My name is Roberto Natalini, and with me today, the co-organizer of this event is Mark Kasulen. We wanted to do this event to give you an insider perspective on the state of the industry in wine country, specifically in Sonoma Valley, Napa Valley, some of the most popular and loved destination of the Bay Area. Unfortunately, 2020 has been really challenging, to say the least, a dramatic year. Actually, a series of events that really had impacted the wine country badly, and 2020 could be the worst year for wine country since the prohibition in terms of number and volume of business and economy. So let me tell you a little bit about Mark. Mark will be leading the first part of the event and the last part of the event. Mark, he lives in Sonoma Valley. He's been a Guild member for many years, for 15 years, and he's been also certified member since 2015. He contributed to multiple San Francisco Tour Guide Guild educational events. He's also a staff instructor at ITMI. He's a West Coast trainer for War Strides, educational travel. He's also an ambassador trainer for Bespoke Experiences, which is actually a company where we been working together for a few years. Most interestingly, he's also bilingual. He's fully fluent in Japanese and works regularly actively in multiple Japanese travel projects. He will also give you more a personal introduction about himself very shortly. And after Mark, 2 p.m., we will have another special guest, Anne Marie from Peju Winery. Let me show you, actually, I would like to show you a beautiful photo of Peju Winery, just to put us in the mood of the fall color of Napa Valley. Peju Winery is located in the central part of Napa Valley by Rutherford. Surrounding neighbors are really established names like Robert Mondavi, Inglenook. This is like a relatively small winery, but very well known. Started as a family business, and then over the time grew and grew. But I don't want to talk about Peju Winery for too much right now. I would like to pass the microphone to Mark, which we will focus on Sonoma Valley. Mark will tell you the nuts and bolts of specifically putting together and organizing a group tour in Sonoma Valley that he had to do in October. So he has a lot of inside information for us on the new health and security procedures that need to be followed in order to put together a group tour today. Okay, Mark.
All right. So hello, everybody. I'm Mark Kasulen. As Roberto said, would you give me a thumbs up so I can see your thumbs? For those of you who have your videos on, great. Hey, Jesse, it's a little dark in your world. Can't see you very well, my friend, but I know that you are there. Perfect. So, hey, everybody, as Roberto said, we're going to chat about nuts and bolts. So I don't have any razzle-dazzle pretty pictures for you or any bells or whistles, but I do have absolute firsthand experience that really educated me. So that's what I'd like to share with us. So looking at our day, we have 3 portions of our time together today. We have nuts and bolts, which is going to happen right now. And as we said in the invitation from the Guild, this is about the design, preparation, and delivery of a group tour from the city, San Francisco, of course, to Sonoma. It's a one-day group event, not a couple or two or three. This is a larger group that I'll be able to refer to, and all of it is applicable to any kind of wine tours that we do. We'll talk about the nuts and the bolts of that here in the beginning. And then Anne Marie Howle from Peju Winery is going to come join us. The game plan is for her to join us just about 20 minutes, 25 minutes from right now. And she'll give us a perspective from the central part of Napa, what it looks like there in her world. And then when we return from Anne Marie's time, we'll look at the second portion of the nuts and bolts. So because we're on a video conference, and I know someone mentioned to me a little bit earlier when we were getting started here that it was your first time on one of these video conferences. So there's a little bit of housekeeping around that. I want you to know that if for some reason your computer goes crazy and your internet doesn't work and you lose GoToMeeting, just come back in. Just log back into the same place you did when you got started. Sometimes it'll kick you off. Other times, it'll kick me off. I'm up here in rural Sonoma, Glen Ellen specifically. So if it kicks me off, you guys are without a presenter. And that's not a big deal because Roberto will carry the conversation forward from where we left off, getting a sense of your experiences as it relates to what we last talked about. And I'll just log back in. There we go. Hey, David, you're in. What a good thing. I've got a list of everybody who's here. I want you to know that we have about 6 or 8 of us who have videos, and the other 10 or so don't have your videos on. I'm going to ask those of you who are sitting at your computers. Jason, I'll put you on the spot as well on this one. I'm just curious from hey, Ellen, welcome. I'm just curious from a video conference perspective. If I ask you a question, you could give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down, and then I would know. For example, I would ask the group, how many of you have done a tour with guests in the last 6 months in person? Just show me a thumbs up, and I can see in there that there's 3 or 4 of us who have. For those of you who don't have your videos on, would you just go into chat and type yes? You don't have to type no, just go into your chat it to everyone and say yes. And then Roberto and I will be able to see the chats. There's a chance we might get a sense of how many of us are actively out there doing tours amidst this chaos. It's a pretty good chance that the number is pretty small. That's why we thought it might be a good idea to show you what it looks like on the road. Great. And I'm guessing you all can hear my voice pretty well because no one has complained so far. Got a couple of thumbs up. Len is in the background there. For those of you who are not watching, he's in the background giving me high signs to tell me if I'm speaking loud enough and or if my video has gotten funky. And we're starting to get some responses from people in the chat. So thank you. All right. So we invited everybody to come here. And in the invitation, we said design, preparation, and delivery. So designing a wine tour, preparing for it, and delivering it. We might do all of those steps as tour guides, or maybe the tour company is going to give us the document, and all we do is prepare for it ourselves, namely our commentary and routing, and then we just deliver it. In this particular case, I'm going to go soup to nuts from the start forward until the completion of it, and we can take bits and pieces from it, but we will look at the people of the tour, the purpose, the wineries, the food involved in the day, the transportation, how commentary is delivered amidst the COVID chaos, and the COVID restrictions and requirements that have popped up. Now that all makes sense to us, but we have to recognize that anytime we say COVID restrictions or regulations or requests or recommendations, every city, every county, every state has a little bit different nuance, and it changes sometimes almost daily. So there's nothing I could say that would be rock solid, absolute fact as of today in the world of Sonoma and wine tours, other than COVID restrictions apply and they are changing daily. So when we talk with our guests, our clients about all this, that's the piece of the puzzle that's different. All right, is that all making sense so far? Give me a thumbs up if it does. Thank you. I don't in any way want to bore you nor be redundant, but I'd like you, I'm going to use, so we have a group of us here who we can see. The rest of you who are listening, thank you for listening. Jill, I can see you. Jesse, I can see you. David Rubens, I can see you as well. Yvonne, nice to see you. Susan, you are there. Babs, you are there. Nice hat. I'm going to ask us right here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of us. I'm going to ask us to represent the whole of the participants who are listening. And we're currently at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, about 25 of us are here. So for those of us who have the video on, I just want to ask you this. If you have been doing wine tours and you're comfortable with them, and if all things were good and kosher and you had everything prepared, you'd go out tomorrow and do a wine tour in Sonoma and you would be perfectly comfortable, just wave at me so I know who we are. All right, great. And then for others of you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And then for others of you, you are in another category. Either you're just getting settled here, you haven't done many wine tours just yet, you're in a position where you're ready to do them, you just haven't done one yourself first, or whatever category. Either way, what we're going to cover here, all the whys regarding who, what, when, where, and why of a wine tour that causes us to prepare wholly, we're going to look at all those together. So for the veterans, I invite you to understand that these are all the same questions we ask ourselves. Excuse me. These are all the same questions we ask ourselves prior to a tour, but we run into the implications of COVID. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to look at the questions we use to prepare, which is what I did for this October 23rd wine tour. So on my page in front of me, I have an 8.5 by 11 page paper here, a legal pad. And on the left side of it, I've written some questions. If you want to play the game and write the questions as well, I invite you to do that because we're going to answer the questions as well. We have section A and section B to this nuts and bolts. Section A is going to be about the questions. All right. Most of us know most of the questions, but we're going to look at all of them. Okay. So the questions before we go out and do this wine tour as guides are who, what, when, where, and why. The 5 W's, right? I've got it top to bottom. Who, what, when, where, and why. There is nothing rocket sciencey about this. But if you think about I'm going to call it the October 23rd wine tour, just so I can refer to it. I would prefer not to say who the group was so that it doesn't let anybody's personal or professional information get publicized on a training recording, okay? So the organization that I worked with was in San Francisco, and it was a group of 20. And we were going to come to Sonoma for a day, and they were going to go back to Sonoma. The reason why I got involved with this in August, mind you, amidst all the chaos of COVID, was because one of our colleagues who is a member of the guild has delivered this tour for these people in previous years, and she was unable to do it this year, COVID being the main restriction inside her world, but she wanted to take good care of the October 23rd guests. So in August, I was introduced to them. I told them I would take good care of them on behalf of their every year guide, and somehow we would put together the tour. So as a guide, as you all know, we're in the midst of redefining ourselves, right? How are we going to guide? What are we going to wear when we guide? How are we going to talk to the people being socially distant without ruining our voice with our guests? All of those questions come up, right? So let's look at them one at a time. Let's look at the who. So the question I need to find out is, are these people young? Are they in their 20s, 30s? Are they older? Think about the questions you would ask if you were going to take a wine tour out, and I invite you to write down in another spot near who on a column on your page what the answers are. Who are they? Are they young? Are they old? Are they family? Are they a professional group? These are the questions that I have to ask. And there are implications around COVID. If I'm going out with a college group because they're not in college right now and they want to go wine tasting, I think I have some pretty significant challenges around the wearing of masks and the ways in which they encounter space with each other, just because of what we've learned on the national news around what college students are doing, young 20s. Now, on the other hand, if these were elder professionals, there's a pretty good chance that they would have a good understanding of the social distancing, and somehow we could find a way to deliver the day. The who also gets important because we need to know which wineries we're going to go to. All right. So first of all, I figured out with my guests who they are. Got 20 people. They are adults, grown-ups, professionals. Fine. Thank you very much. What is it? It's a very simple one-day tour. San Francisco, couple of wineries, some food, and going home. Now that might seem like an easy question. Who, and then what? But how long do they want to spend in the wine country? How long is their day? When we say a day to and fro, are we picking them up at 8 and taking them back at 6? That's a pretty long day. Or maybe we're picking them up at 10 and taking them back at 4. Maybe it's short and easy and quick. But the point is, what is it? And for us, it's going to be a chance for them to get together as professionals and hang out, which takes us to one of the questions that comes up later. Why? So I learned that this professional group is on an internship together because they're medical professionals. And once a year, the organization at the medical center brings them together so that they could spend a day casually outside of their academics and hospital work to get to know one another and be with each other. So the why for their day is so that they can have, let's call it a professional retreat, a day together. So by knowing the why of what they're traveling, that's very specific, right? Right? They're not just going to play for the day. They're not just going to drink a lot of alcohol. They're going to be together because they're serious professionals. Okay. So that brings up the question for me, where? So if they are adult professionals from a medical center spending a day together and they want to come to Napa, Sonoma, quote unquote, I asked the client more specifically, well, where would you like to go? And she said, oh, we like Napa, Sonoma. Somebody mentioned Sterling, which is at the top of Napa. Somebody else mentioned Vianza, which is at the bottom of Sonoma. Those are geographically very different from one another. So in talking with them about this, they need a day away from their workspace. They want a place to hang. They all like wine and they want to talk to each other. So that gave me the opportunity to eliminate Napa, or at least northern Napa, because it's just farther away from San Francisco. That all makes sense, right? You would agree that's the route we would travel. So now I know this is what they want to do, and I asked them when. The when of it was really simple. This is August we started the conversation. They told me late October, early November. So now I have about a 2-3 week window, maybe a 4-week window that we could book things to do stuff in. So far, no major complications. Who, what, when, where, why. All of those answers come from the client. I was able to ask the group leader and she gave me the answers. Then we come up with 2 other questions I invite you to write on the bottom of your page. Those are how and how much. Now I say that with a little pause at the end because how and how much are pretty big questions. I have the answer to how. She doesn't have the answer to how. She wants to see wineries, they want to have food, they want to be able to talk, and they want to get to and from the wine country in the same day. That's what they want to do. They have no clue how to do that. That's my job. They also want to know how much. So that also falls into my bailiwick that I have to find out for them, although I do know that they have a budget. And here's what I got for their budget. Whatever it costs, quote unquote. So these are medical professionals. They're not trying to be cheap or economical. They want to spend a day. They don't want to spend $1 million, but whatever it costs, they're willing to do that, right? So all of this might be too vague, but think about it. If you're going to do a wine tour in the coming days, I know some of us have already been offered wine tours, and they've been put together and canceled because some of the restrictions came up. So for this particular one on October 23rd, I have 2 months to do it. So I get the opportunity to figure out that it's 20 people who are going to be traveling to the wine country. Okay, great. The question of how, obviously we need a vehicle, right? So when we say how, if you were going to answer the question to how we get there, immediately you have an answer, right? We take a bus. But now take that answer and add the element of the equation called COVID requirements right next to the word bus. Now we got 20 people and a bus. So what do? Get a bus that holds 25 and put 20 people in it? Do I get 2 buses that are 27 seaters and put 10 people in each? Do I get 6 Suburbans and take 3 or 4 together? Do I take 1 motor coach that allows them to sit in a 50-passenger vehicle and spread themselves out and pay a little more money? They all cost, right? So now I've got to take these options with these prices, and I've got to take them back to the client and say, okay, here's how we might do it from a transportation perspective. What do you think? What do you feel about the COVID implications? And here's what it's going to cost. What's your answer? Now, I guess probably for some of you, I'm being very vague, but I'm asking the questions of who, what, when, where, why, how, and how much. And eventually, all of those answers come up. Most of them from the client. Thank you very much. She was very clear with me. And the rest of them came from me and my research. Now, the reason why I'm looking at all the questions is because right now it's 5 minutes to 2 o'clock. My game plan is to be sure that we see all of what the questions are. So for very experienced guides, great, we know what the questions are, but none of us are more experienced with COVID tour guiding than anybody else because everybody's new to it. So what we want to do is look at what the COVID implications have been in my research, because when we come back from Anne Marie Howle's presentation a little bit after 2:30, I'm just going to give you all the answers to how we pulled it off for October 23rd. So if you're expecting me to tell you right now which transportation company we use and what buses, you're going to have to wait just a little bit. We'll do all the answers and I'll tell you point blank how we did it for that one. But if you were going to look for a transportation company, which ones would you approach? I could tell you one of them is Pure Luxury. I could tell you another one is Bauer. You probably have the names of a couple others, like Lux, in your mind. I invite you to write down the list of the names of transportation companies you know, because your reference chart will continue to grow the more time you spend with the rest of us, your colleagues. I know that's how I did this. All right. So Roberto, before I continue, let me just ask you, have we been in touch? Are we almost set with Anne Marie?
Yeah, she's already online. She's
Great.
already
Okay.
with.
So Anne Marie, I see that your name is up there. I'm Mark Kasulen. I'll finish up in just a minute or two here, and you can have the floor at 2 o'clock. To catch Anne Marie up, Anne Marie, I just want you to know we were talking about a Sonoma group tour and all the preparation involved for an October 23rd event that we were going to do. And we haven't yet talked about which wineries we went through, which ones we chose, what the process was, anything about the food. And hey, everybody, here's the next question, just out of curiosity. When we say, how do we do the wine tour? How am I going to give commentary to a group of people on one or more motor coaches? How am I going to be protected in the process? How are they going to be protected from germs spewing from my speech? You can even hear now in this Zoom, it requires me to project just to get the Zoom, the GoToMeeting microphone to pick me up, right? How do we do that? I'll put a mask on and talk through a microphone? That's interesting, put a mask on, talk through a microphone. Or maybe they're gonna want me to have a shield. Either way, it was pretty complicated to put it together and we succeeded. So when we come back after Anne Marie's presentation, I'm gonna give you all the answers to the October 23rd. Who, what, when, where, why, how, and how much. And we'll have an opportunity to bounce a bunch of questions and answers back and forth with each other. Okay, give me a thumbs up if that was okay with you. Wonderful, thank you. Roberto, I'm going to pass it off to you so we can welcome Anne Marie Howle, please.
All right, thank you, Mark, for this great part A of our event. Mark put us out all those questions that kind of, I'm sure they represent many of the questions and insecurities that we have today. I speak for myself. I love going to wine country, and now I have so many doubts. Like, what happens if I get a request for a wine tour, for a private tour, right? What I'm supposed to do? Unfortunately, I haven't done any wine country tour this summer. So as Anne Marie Howle is getting ready, first of all, let me show you again the beautiful photo of Peju Winery, so to keep us in the mood again. This is the best time, in my opinion, to visit wine country because usually that's when there's not that many people around. It's very quiet. It's all the beautiful fall colors. If you go earlier in the fall, you can actually see the active winery working. And this is a photo of Peju Winery, which is also this building that you see in the photo. It's actually the logo on their label, and it's this building, this tower, which is about 50 feet tall with this copper roof. It's also one of the most iconic building in central Napa Valley as well. That was built in the 90s from an architect from LA. But the winery itself started in the 80s, early 80s, if I'm not mistaken, 1983. That's the year I was born. That's where Tony Peju and his wife Herta decided to purchase this 50 acres area in Rutherford, right in the middle of Napa Valley. And they slowly started to make wine at the beginning of the first few years from their own garage as a temporary winery, and then later on in the 90s they built this beautiful building that we see in the photo. Anne Marie, are
Hi.
you ready to start your presentation?
Can you hear me, Roberto?
I can hear you. I can see you now. I would like to just say, thank you for being here, Anne Marie. She accepted to give us this about 30 minutes presentation about Central Napa Valley, and in particular the specific requirements needed from a winery to give a wine tasting, right? And as she will tell you, those requirements are constantly changing, right? It's kind of complicated to follow up with all these different changes. Anne Marie, she's the guest experience director at Peju, if I'm not mistaken, right, Anne Marie?
That's correct, and thank you for the introduction. I'm going to leave your photo up due to the craziness of this week. I'm going to just kind of talk through where we are right now, answer your questions about how to bring groups up here and what we're doing as your winery partner to make sure that their experience meets their expectations, that's safe, that we can fulfill those questions. I know that you're going to continue with those questions. I listened to part of your presentation. It was very interesting, and it's the same questions I get when guests call or groups call. So I can relate to a lot of the who, what, where, when, and why. So I'd like to first thank you for the opportunity to speak with all of you. Some of you I've met at other functions, and I look forward to meeting people again in person hopefully in the near future. But until then, we're going to just take some time to kind of talk through what we're doing here at Peju, what I know some of my neighbors are doing in the Napa Valley. And then I'm going to take your questions, because I think that's the big thing, is that let's communicate and ask me those questions that you're wondering about. Just to give you a little bit of background, my background, I've been with this winery 10 years. And over the years, I have managed our experience department, which is both culinary and tasting experiences, both private, corporate, and individual travel groups, and also overseeing the tasting room. Once COVID hit, kind of our world changed completely, like everyone else's, and that whole side of the business, the corporate travel, went away. And we had to really do some pivoting to figure out how we could still share the beautiful Napa Valley, our wines, with guests who are still coming to the area. And I think that was the first thing that we all recognized about middle of May, is that travelers who had planned vacations to San Francisco, to the Bay Area, to Napa Valley, many of them were keeping their travel plans and coming here. And so we had to quickly figure out how, in this new world of COVID and safety measures that we have to put in place for guests, how we can make that happen and create a wonderful experience different from what we were used to doing. So we spent a lot of time on it and opened our doors the minute the government said we could in May. At that point, we could open our doors inside briefly, and we had a sales room, and about a week later, then we were told we had to serve outside. So we had lots of different changes going on. And through that, we learned some very valuable things, and we also listened to our guests. Just to bring you flash forward, we currently are here every day, Monday, 7 days a week, 10 to 6. We offer individual tastings by reservations. We do handle some group business, but we handle it very specifically as a private venture with COVID safety regulations in place, and I'll explain what those are. And we also do culinary. We do food and wine pairings on the weekends. We have, during the nice weather, we had picnic options going on where guests could order picnics, and we provide picnics for guests. And we've learned to do that again through all and the ever-changing regulations. Bring you up to current date, as of Tuesday, we were put back in the purple tier, which means we are allowed to host our guests outside only. And in the middle of winter and rain and cold, it obviously brought the new challenges of how to make that happen. So here at Peju, we secured a tent a week ago, and it's 160 feet by 22, so it's very, very large. Of course, then we got the regulation that we can only have one side on our tent, which doesn't really give you any protection from weather, cold, rain. So on Monday, we are going to be moving this tent in our property to actually be against a building. So we get a wall from the building and a wall from the tent to create a better location for our guests to enjoy wine. So what you're looking at right now on the screen, that is the tent. It's very beautiful. This weekend we'll be serving under it as well as on the lawn areas. And then we're looking forward to moving things on Monday. So how it works if a guest comes to us or a group comes to us is we do make a reservation, and we have a series of wine educators. If it's a group that exceeds the 6-person maximum that we're allowed to do as a walk-in, and we have to consider it private, then basically we consider its own group. So if a group of 8 were to call me and we have the staff to handle it, we would take this group of 8 and we would create 2 groups of 4. And we would have a table for 4, and 6 foot from that, we'd have another table of 4. And then our host would pour the wine to them. What we've learned is that we go to the guests, just like you would in a restaurant. We serve the wine at the table, we serve the food at the table. There's no standing at a bar to taste your wines. There's no walking up to a counter to get some food. It's all done directly to the customer at their table. And that really helps keep people safe. It helps kind of keep people from narrowly mingling with each other, and allows still for conversation for groups, because 6 foot is really not that far apart, and yet, but it keeps them safe as well. They come on the property with their masks on. When they get to their location, they can take their mask off and enjoy their wine and food, and then we ask that if anytime they leave the table, they put their mask on, and if they need to use the restroom or if they're going to just walk the grounds. We don't have a lot of free open space right now because of COVID, so we don't just allow people to run in and buy a bottle of wine and sit down and find a place and enjoy it, because we do need to manage the number of people that come on property and their safety and the safety of those who have reservations. So it's a little different than we used to do before, but we're finding that guests kind of enjoy it. It's a very personal experience, whether it's a group or it's just two people coming up for the afternoon. It gives them a chance to talk to their host a little more. We get to tell them all about our fabulous wines. We get to talk about the beautiful area. And we have so much ground space that as long as Mother Nature doesn't throw any rain or too cold of weather, we can be completely outside, and it really is a great experience. That is our space. In Napa right now this week, there are a lot of people scrambling to figure out what to do because they might have a smaller building or smaller land, and they're working on how we can accommodate the outside tastings. So I know many of our neighbors almost everybody's on reservation only. Most people are doing 6 people or under. Very hard to get same day reservations at a lot of locations just because we're limited to how many people we can host. And so I know that the guests coming in are kind of finding it a little different because they were used to just being able to come to Napa Valley and pop into a winery and go tasting. And that isn't the case. We do some same day reservations because we have a little more space depending on the weather. So all of that is where we are today. And I would like to just kind of ask, of you, I know that, do you bring people from the Bay Area? We have a lot of people coming from San Francisco, San Jose, Santa Clara. I just met with a group of private drivers this morning, and all the way down to Tri-Valley. They came up and we just had kind of like an informal breakfast and conversation about what the business is looking like for them and how we can be good partners. And the same thing is with our tour guide industry. We're here to be your partner, and we're here to make sure that we meet guest expectation. And I think that's our biggest primary goal, is that the best way in this communicating of where, when, why, who, is that we meet their expectations. So if you know all that information and they know that when they come here, this is how it's going to be. You're going to be guided into an area. You might have a tasting at one set of tables. And if you're having lunch with us, we're going to move you to another set of tables for lunch. We're going to be outside. There's going to be mushroom heaters, wear extra sweaters, all of those things. As long as we give the guests that information, we're finding they're very, very happy to be outside, to do something a little different and coming up to wine country. So that's the methodology we are working under right now. And I would love to just kind of take some questions from you. Yes.
All right, so let me ask the first question, if that's okay. Anne Marie, you can hear me, right?
Yes, I can.
Great, Anne Marie, thank you so much. We're so glad that you came to share this with us. Can you give us a little sense of what it looks like regarding the culinary and serving as it relates to your staff being masked and gloved and distant and all of that, please?
Absolutely. So our culinary, we have a full commercial kitchen here. So our chef practices all required practices, gloves, masks, and so forth. When we do service, we have 2 styles of service. Everybody, even our wine educators, which is interesting talking about tour guides, they are wearing masks. So we are presenting wines like this with masks on and learning to project through a mask. On rare occasion, if it's a smaller group and they're comfortable, our host will move back 10 feet and remove their mask and speak to them. But most of the time, 99% of the time, everyone is wearing a mask on our team, no matter what they're doing. So all of our wait staff is doing it. The protocol for food service in Napa Valley is washing hands. It is not required to wear rubber gloves for service, but all of our tabletops are sanitized in between. We can use china, we can use disposable, either one. We just don't reuse anything. Anything you see, menus, all of that get thrown away the minute we're done with them. The wine lists, wine glasses, we are using glassware. At the very beginning, we just use all plastic, but we have complete sanitized washing machines and dishwashing crews, so we can literally keep things clean and rolling throughout the day.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Babs has a question. She'll put her camera on.
Okay.
Can you hear me? My hand is up now. There we go.
Babs, hi.
Babs, hi. Thank you so much for doing this. This is wonderful. Yes, what I was wondering about is exactly where are you situated in Napa? And what would be the best route to consider to get to you all from, let's say, the city? Thank you.
That's a great question, and it kind of leads in back to how much time your guests have, and this is a really great thing, and I love that you ask those questions about guests. We have so many people call and say, well, I'm staying in Healdsburg, and I want to come to Napa, and then I'm going to Sonoma, and you're like, you're going to be driving all day long. So we are in Rutherford, California, which is about 5 minutes from Yountville, so it's the center of the Napa Valley. From San Francisco proper, it's going to be about an hour and 40-minute drive. During COVID, you can make a little better time now and then, depending on the day, just because the traffic is a little different. But it is definitely probably the farthest north you might want to go if you're doing a day trip from San Francisco in order to take in 1 or 2 or even 3 wineries or wineries and lunch. Because once you get a little further, you're going into the 2-hour travel time one way. And that's a lot of time for your guests to be traveling. We also have a second property called Calmare Estate, which is located in Carneros. So it's the border of Napa and Sonoma and South Napa. And that property is 1 hour San Francisco door to door. And you know, the beauty of that is you're in the southern part of the Napa Valley. So if a group is limited on time, you can come across the Golden Gate Bridge, catch something in Sonoma, come there, and go back and still make that 5-hour window or whatever they're looking for, 6-hour window. So we are pretty centrally located, but probably as far north as you want to go on a day trip.
Great. And can you make sure that we have your email address and contact information put into the chat if possible, or however? I'm not sure how you all do it, but thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome.
I can answer to that. I will send Anne Marie and Peju Winery information on the follow-up email with the recording of the event to everyone. So
thank you, Robert.
And I would encourage any of you, we have a very robust social media. So our Facebook, our Instagram, we do every Thursday, we do some sort of presentation with our winemaker owners, our chef. You're welcome to just join in. You just go to our Facebook Live and you'll see our kitchen and that sort of thing. When we can open up again, we do things like cooking classes. We have interactive culinary experiences. So we're a full gamut property. We are not a restaurant. We don't pretend to be one. We have plenty of those in Napa, but we will definitely can address groups coming in who may want a private lunch and wine tasting or a private food and wine pairing. We offer those types of things throughout the year, and those are typically customized for you. On our website, we have a couple items that we showed to the world, but everything else, you would just contact myself or my team, and we can help you work with your client's budget and come up with ways that, again, we meet their expectations. So it could be as simple as a picnic lunch or sandwiches to, 4-course meal with tables we put them in the vines. So actually you're sitting amongst the vines having a lunch. It's a beautiful experience. So lots of things can be done, and we have lots of property to work with to do that. Any questions?
Any other question for Anne Marie?
Yes, Mark.
Great. So Anne Marie, thank you so much. While others are pondering what questions they have, they won't be bashful. But there are 2 things that would be really helpful for us guys as we kind of structure what we're thinking when we choose for our guests where to go. Could you give us a general ballpark of what price range Peju's experiences fall under? And could you give us an abbreviated presentation on the benefits of the membership and how that works for wine club people, please?
So twofold question. I'll address the first one. First one, our tastings are $45 a person. We serve 5 to 6 wines. We do a presentation of our history, the area, the wines themselves. Takes about 35 to 40 minutes. And that is a standard that we do throughout the year. When we have groups, we might change that up a little depending on their schedule and time, and even sometimes their budget. If we have to do a few less wines, we can adjust things. As far as our culinary program, our lunches for a picnic with a tasting run about $80 a person, and that includes the tasting and wine with lunch. And what we'll do for that is we actually serve a collective of 5 wines on a little rack. They get an individual bag that has their lunch in it. We take them through those wines, and then we give a little extra wine following that tasting. Our culinary lunches amongst the vines, those types of things, start at about $150 a head and go up from there. And that goes lunch and dinner. How it works for membership, we have 4 different clubs, 4 or 5. We have a lot of members all over Napa, all over the Bay Area, especially in the Bay Area. We just had many of them up here last weekend for a pickup experience. So typically with our club members, they get a 20% discount on whatever we do. So again, however you're structuring, whether they're paying directly to the winery, however your business works, or you're bundling it all up and selling to them, we could just work with you on what the needs are and who these members are. We definitely are family owned and operated. We treat our guests the same way. They're our family. And so we really try to work within budget constraints. At Calmare, we can do a tasting for $35 a person. We have temporarily closed that tasting room due to the new restrictions, hopefully to open soon. But there again, those are different styles of wine. Those are Pinots and Chardonnays. We're up in Peju. We're doing more of your Bordeaux varietals.
Thank you, Anne Marie.
Well, if no one else has question for Anne Marie, I actually have a fun one. Not like I've seen on your website that you are also doing, obviously in times of COVID, virtual tastings. I have received invitation from other wineries or wine programs to do online wine tasting, and I was always skeptical. I'm supposed to do like a virtual wine tasting, so I would like to know about your online experience.
Sure. That we got to learn in March. We hadn't thought about virtual before, and this is one of the blessings of COVID. It taught us a whole new channel to get into. So we do several different styles of virtual tastings. We have our generic virtual tasting that happens every Thursday. Anyone can join on Facebook Live. If you want to purchase the wines that they're featuring, you can do that throughout the month. And there's a series, it comes in a month packet of wines. So you get like 6 wines, and then each Thursday there's a different theme. Today I think they're doing the main course of Thanksgiving. I'm not even sure. And that's just super fun. It's really well produced. We have invested in a lot of production materials to make sure that we're giving something back that is valuable to people watching. We also then have a huge market for both corporate and individuals, where you could call up. Say you have 15 people on your team and they're all over the country, and you want to have a virtual wine tasting for them. We will actually create the package. We'll send them door to door to each individual. We'll set up the Zoom call. We'll do the production, and we'll host a tasting for you. We've done things with popcorn tasting in wine. We've done cookie tasting in wine. We've gotten very creative as guests are looking for ways to touch their customers or touch their family. We've done birthday parties, anniversaries. Say it's an individual group, we can actually have a host get on with a family and take them through a wine tasting based on the wines they purchased, and it takes about 45 minutes. And then they get to enjoy the area. We talk about what's going on in the winery. We can sometimes we've even walked outside with the camera and say, this is what it looks like right now. So lots of different ways to address the virtual need for the guests, because we know that is going to be the way of the future. We also are incorporating virtual in all of our wine club activities moving forward. So in the past, we would throw parties or pickup events or tastings, and we hadn't really thought about the guests who can't come to it. So this has given us room to think and like, wow, we should have a virtual piece of that so that those guests can share whatever we're doing wherever they are in the country. So we're working on our 2021 programs that all include a virtual element as well as in person. So it's a really exciting thing for us, and quite successful, and we're looking forward to having it growing.
Thank you, Anne Marie. And the last question I would like to ask you is about an update on the damages that Napa Valley suffered because of the glass fire. As we know, burned over 70,000 acres, almost 70,000 acres of land. Were you your winery impacted directly or indirectly from the fires, or any update or insight that you could give us?
Thank you for asking. It was a really tough year this year, and an early fire, which really was really difficult for our industry. We personally did not have any physical damage to our properties, except for one piece in Calistoga, and it was buildings around a home, and the crops that were up there, small, minute compared to other things that happened around the valley. We had harvested much of our Chards and Pinots prior to that, so they're all fine. We took very great care in selecting what reds we're going to bring in, so we did leave some on the vines and chose not to produce some because of the smoke damage. But overall, we got through it. I think as we all know, if you're all in the Bay Area, the smoke itself from that fire was something none of us had really ever experienced, how thick it was. We actually, for the first time ever, closed this tasting room down for a weekend. We moved everything down to our South Napa and hosted the few guests that were just dying to go wine tasting during that time at Calmare, because you couldn't, the air quality up here was just too bad. We are, as an industry, we are definitely been double punched, but we're strong. We all are supporting each other. Some vintners chose to leave their grapes on the vines. They had insurance to cover it. They might have had extra volume of wine. Maybe it was just too much. And I think what you're going to see is what we're tasting, because we are tasting some of those juices. They're fermenting right now. There's going to be some great 2020 wine. How much of it? I don't know. I don't think that's really known yet. But you know, looking out our windows, if you came up Napa Valley, if you came up with a group right now and you drove up Highway 29, you probably wouldn't know we had any fires. That's how the damages fell. If you went up Silverado Trail, which parallels to Highway 29, you would see the damage, especially as you get up in the Calistoga area. So, you know, again, sometimes the news, especially during that fire, I had people from all over the country calling me, "You guys are on fire, you're gone." The valley floor was pretty safe. You know, we were safe. You know, you saw the fires in some of the hills, but it really was the hillsides and further north that got hit the worst. And as an industry, we are all working and raising money to help people get back on their feet, and, you know, trying to balance that with the COVID. So we're lucky it's over. Fire season is over, and we take a deep breath now, and we plan for 2021.
Absolutely. Well, thank you again, Anne Marie. I'm really glad that you guys weren't damaged by the fires. It's such a beautiful estate and property. I was lucky enough to visit like exactly 1 year ago, and I will encourage everyone, if you haven't been to Peju yet, just stop by in Rutherford and taste their wines. Okay, thank you, Anne Marie, again for participating in our online event. And if there's no other question for Anne Marie, we can continue on with our program. You are welcome to stay with us, Anne Marie, as Mark will answer those questions that he put out like on the first part of the event. What do you think, Mark?
Alrighty, that sounds great. Anne Marie, we are very grateful. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us. You're welcome to putz about and stay on as long as you'd like. And if and when you have to go, we greet you adieu. And we will share your winery's contact information and the names of both wineries with the whole guild once we complete this. Thank you so much, Anne Marie. Okay, my friends, back to our nuts and bolts of a group tour to Sonoma. So thank you very much for humoring me before. I know it felt a little bit like I might have been dragging you along there, but the process has been so fascinating for me to simply put together one wine tour throughout this last so many months. I've taken more than 1,000 people to the wine country over the last 15 years of my career. And I've done it with multiple companies, and I've done it independently. and I have a Class B license with air brakes and passenger endorsements. So I've driven the big 30, 35 passenger vehicles from the city up to Napa, and I've done so much of it. But putting this one together took more energy than you can possibly imagine. So with your permission, I'd like to give you the answers to those questions that I asked for the October 23rd tour. Does that sound good with you? All I need is a thumbs up to let me know you still like me and you're listening. All right, great. All right, so it's equally as simple as we said. Who, what, when, where, why, how, and how much. So we know the who. Please know that these are medical interns from one of the medical centers, 20 of them. That's really quite simple. I have no concerns around their activities as it relates to COVID protections, right? We got that one covered. The next one around what? Okay, so it is one day out of San Francisco up here to hang out in the wine country. Great. When is it going to be? They said any of those couple of weeks around the end of October, but a Friday would be great. So when I spoke with the wineries, that's what I shared with them. No pressure, but we've got 20 people. They are medical doctors, so the winery could be a little more sure that the guests will be appropriate. And why is because they want to hang out with each other. So I have to choose the winery carefully. So obviously I live here in Glen Ellen, almost next to the Jack London Park and the Benziger Winery. So I take lots of guests to Benziger, right? They've got caves, they've got a tram tour, lots of different buildings. All things are great. So I went straight to Benziger and talked with them about my 20-person group, and can we put 6 people on the tram tour 3 times, 4 groups? Can we separate them? La-di-da-di-da. And Benziger, which has been purchased by a corporate conglomerate, said no. They didn't say maybe. They didn't say we'll talk with you. They didn't say we can adjust. They didn't say we'll figure out how we can do this for you, Mark, who has brought many people to their winery. They said no. So I traveled on and went up the valley a little bit. If you know Sonoma, you know that as you travel north of Glen Ellen into Kenwood, you run into Kunde and Chateau St. Jean. And one of the wineries that this medical group suggested was Kunde, because they have been there before. Great. So off we go to these really large wineries, big properties, lots of room, tastings up on the hill. And they said, if you have a group of 20, it doesn't matter how many small groups you break it down into, when they get on the property, they're going to mingle like kindergartners, and there's nothing we can do about it. The answer to your request, Mark, is no.
Oh. I suspect it was a no.
So there we are. I got 3 or 4 no's coming out. So next thing is, okay, so I have a few friends who own their own wineries, family businesses, really great people. Let me go talk to them directly. So I zoom over to Nicholson Ranch, where Deepak, who is the winemaker and the owner there, they've got a pond, and they've got outside tables, and they've got vineyards, and they've got a tasting room, and all the things that a winery should have. And Deepak says, of course, I'd love to have your guests. Bring them in any number you want. We'll split them up into smaller groups. We'll ask them to be appropriate. We will serve them distantly. It'll work just fine, and you could stay as long as you'd like if they'd like to hang out. So bam, I got one of the wineries. Next thing I think is, if they're going back to San Francisco, the 2 closest, 3, 4 closest wineries to San Francisco and Sonoma, of course, are Ramsgate, Vianza, Klein, and Jacuzzi. And in order to save myself some trouble, I decided to go to Jacuzzi and Klein because they're right across the street from each other, and they are the same family-owned business. 1 family, 2 wineries. Make a note of that for yourself. So I go to Jacuzzi, and they said something similar to what Anne Marie said. Yes, we got a tent. We could do it outside. They will have to sit during their tastings. There will be a limit of 5 or 6 per table. We'd prefer that they don't get up and mingle during the tasting. We will pour their wines separate from the table. So we're going to bring them glasses of wine. We're not pouring in front of them for whatever reason that was. But yes, we could take your group. And then I went across to Klein and had the same question. They had a similar answer. And then Klein said to me, but you know, we do have something called a cabana experience. And I said, what's that? And they said, do you remember those really interesting birds we had on the property? The peacocks and the California valley quail and the roosters and all those bird houses we had, the big 6x10 bird houses that were built. Come on, let me show you to them. They took all of those bird houses, took all the birds out, all the bird poop out, cleaned them up, made them sparkly, and each one of them is an individual cabana designed for 4 to 6 private tasters to sit there. There's 7 of them, 4 or 5 per. Bam, there's my answer. I got a place for them to hang out. They can sit in groups of 4 or 5. Klein is the answer. They'll do it for us, no problem. So, question is food. What do we do about food? Have you tried to make a reservation in a restaurant lately? Have you tried to find out if 4 people can eat 6 people? How do you feed 20? Well, the answer to that question is really simple. Box lunch. Give them a brown bag or something. So we found out that the Boulangerie Basque Cafe on the Sonoma Plaza is more than willing to let you order their box lunches online in advance, and for this odd COVID window, they'll even deliver them to you if you'd like. So I take the conversation back to Deepak at Nicholson, and I said, hey, Deepak, if we came in the late morning, did a tasting, could we hang out for another hour and drink a few bottles of wine as we ate somebody else's food on your property? And of course, Deepak said, yes, we would love to have your guests eat lunch here. So now we got something. We got a winery in the morning. We got lunch brought there, ordered in advance by box as they like it, separate social distancing, and we could drive back to San Francisco via Sears Point or the Sonoma Raceway and stop in at Klein and have ourselves a cabana experience on this big property. And voila, we have everything we need except transportation. So here we go. Transportation. Did you have your favorite choice of vehicle? I know I had my choice of vehicle. 1's going to be much easier than 2, and 2's going to be much easier than 3 or 4 vehicles to get them safely here. And by golly, after giving the pricing to them and asking them what they would like to do, they went with my choice of 1 motor coach. So now we've got a company ready to pick them up, bring them to Nicholson Ranch, have lunch, go to Klein, and then go back to the city safely. The only challenge we run into is in September, I was not willing to get in a vehicle with any other human beings except my wife. So now what does one do? We made it this far. You hear me laughing because it is really a conundrum. It's a great day, a great experience. It's money, it's a job, and I do not want to be in a vehicle with other humans. So that brings in the conversation of Vox Connect. Many of you have heard of this. If you haven't, we will include the information for it in our follow-up to this training. But Mark and John, who did the presentation to the Guild earlier this summer and talked about the Vox Connect app that you can have on your telephone so that you can ask your guests to download the app. Then you plug in your microphone and your headset and you speak to your guests no matter where they are on a device that doesn't cost them a penny. So we agreed that they'll get in the bus, motor coach that is, they'll drive towards Sonoma, stop at the North Viewpoint, check out the bridge, take some pictures, and somewhere past Marin, when they start to get up near 37, the leader of the group on the motor coach will have had everybody download the app on their phone, and I'm scheduled to speak to them at a very specific time to spend 20 minutes with them, getting them ready for their first winery, because their host for the day is a meet me there kind of guide. So we took the meet me there concept. They agreed to meet me at Nicholson. I get to spend 20 minutes with them, telling them everything they need to know before they get to Nicholson. Then I see them in person. We spend the time, the lunch comes, we deliver the lunch. It's delightful. They get in the bus. 2 of us, their bus, and I drive over to Klein. They have the cabana experience. All is well. Life is good. We wave goodbye, and I never got in their vehicle. It's a delightful experience. I could not expect more. Then, after explaining the how to them, the question was how much? Anybody got an idea? I don't want you to throw numbers at me, but I want you to know that the numbers are really simple. It's $50 a head at Nicholson. Do the math, that's $1,000. It's $60 a head for a specific tasting at the Cabana Experience at Klein. Thank you. Do the math, it's $1,200. Lunches are about $17 a piece, $20 or so, give or take. Okay, great. That's another $1,000. The vehicle's going to cost somewhere between $15 and $2,000, $1,600, $1,700 for the motor coach. So that brings us to $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, give or take, something like that. Do the math. You see what it adds up to. They're going to pay me some dollars and cents for the process. Thank you very much. They've done their day within a budget that's not $1 million, and it worked perfectly. You could not ask for a better planned experience. However, I don't want to deal with any of the dollars and cents of it. So we get it all set up with the vendors. We get it all set up with the group leader, my dear colleague. Her name is Miss Kathy. We get it set up so that on a specific day after we get all the confirmations on September 23rd, all three vendors are awaiting her to call with her credit card to pay for the reservations that I have scheduled. No hassle, nothing. All they do is pay me. Life is good. I never got on the van. Never got on the motor coach. Delightful combination of activities. We figured out the people, we figured out the purpose, we figured out wineries that would work, we found the food that works, we figured out how to do commentary safely. We know what the COVID restrictions are. The wineries were clear. I could not be more grateful to have had the opportunity. So Friday comes along on that specific day in September. They are so grateful that we pulled it off. My guild colleague who asked me to do it in the first place is so grateful that I pulled it off. Everything went perfectly. The morning of the phone calls to make all the deposits, we have our conference call with the medical center and we get the person with the credit card, and the first words out of their mouth were, San Francisco changed the COVID rules. 20 people can't travel together. Postponed, canceled, game over, see you sometime in the future, they said. So it never happened. It never happened, and the medical center team said, Mark, we are thrilled that we came this close. We will do it with you in the future just this way, but we gotta wait until San Francisco's color of COVID restriction reaches the appropriate color so that we can travel together. And although we designed and prepared an extraordinary day in the wine country, it never got delivered. So I smile and laugh with you because it was an enormously successful experience in life that never happened.
So Mark, you don't charge a fee to put it together first before you go to the next step?
Now, oh, absolutely not. In my case, after 15 years of being in the business, as part of my fee to work with them, that would just be incorporated in the final dollar amount. And I can promise you, when they do the tour in January, and we do deliver it, and they pay me, they will clearly and surely compensate me for everything we did back in September.
That sounds like a home run to me, Mark. It's a great trip around the bags.
All righty, so there you have it. Inside the COVID world, all of those questions about vehicles and questions about wineries and questions about groups and how do we do food, I have never imagined that the foundation of my tour guiding skills, both the knowledge base for commentary and the information of routing and venues and geography and history to put it together, I never realized that that foundation was going to take a back seat to my interaction with the guests. The primary piece of the puzzle, the primary thing I have learned as a professional tour guide, tour director inside COVID, is that it's about the conversation with the guest so that everybody in the picture is comfortable with how it's going to be delivered, Nobody's concerned. We've all got the appropriate protections. The plan is laid out so that it works. And in the end, you know, bravo to everybody who participated in the conversation. And trust me, I picked Len's brain on it multiple times and other colleagues, and we pulled it together. But the punchline of it all is that it never occurred. It is doable. And finally, the biggest part of the gig was being in conversation with the guests about their experience. So there you have it. That's everything about it. Let's chat about that. Somebody want to start somewhere and we'll chat about anything relevant. Got a question? Raise your hand, please. Let us know you're interested. David, why don't you pick it up, please? Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. I appreciate it. First thing that comes to mind is the same day as the tour you had to cancel. What happened when you tried to cancel the lunch and the winery appointments?
Thank you. It was a month in advance that it canceled.
Oh, I thought you said, okay.
It was a month in advance. The big day was the day we set up for the credit card people to get on the phone with the reservations people at the venues to keep it as simple as possible. And that was a month in advance. So I went to the venues in person, quite frankly, and Pure Luxury was the transportation company. And I just let them know that it's postponed. We will spend that money at their venue when the time comes, but it ain't gonna happen in October. Babs, what do you got?
The question I have was, I didn't actually get it, but it appears that you in the end use your own car getting you from point A to point B to point C to point D. They were
Yes.
supposed to come in the motor coach. Okay.
Absolutely.
Just so you know that travel, some people in our tourism industry are, because of COVID-19, charging a fee to organize things. So it's not unusual now for that to happen, and possibly you could have gotten a couple of $100 for your effort, which wouldn't even take care of the time you put in, of course. But
Yes.
just so you know that people are doing it now.
Yes, Babs. Actually, inside the travel world, from my perspective, in multiple training capacities, the fancy word for it appears to be evolving into concierge services for tours. So those of us who are very knowledgeable in particular geographic areas, historical areas, we can somehow, our name gets to those people through all the obvious media and social media ways. But then when the potential client talks to us, we concierge with them to find out really what they're looking for, why they want to travel, how they want to travel, et cetera, et cetera. And yes, you're right. That is absolutely becoming a current service out there in the industry because of the COVID restrictions as they change daily. Yeah. Great.
Thank you. This
You're
was
welcome.
great. It's heartbreaking story on the pocketbook, but an interesting one, because now you've got this tour set up for the next group of people who might come to you for it.
That is true, but not heartbreaking, because when one is sheltered at home, it's kind of nice to do something, you know?
Yeah, that's true. Better than
And
Sudoku, right?
say it again, please.
Better than Sudoku.
Yeah, for a Japanese speaking person, it's funny to think about doing that. So, hey, think about it from other perspectives around the COVID game. Do any questions come up that are, oh, you might consider too small to ask, or maybe too silly, or maybe might show your inexperience or your naivete around a wine tour from the city at this time, in these times? Anything come to mind for you? Len, go ahead, please.
Not so much wine, but technically on the Vox, were there any lessons learned on the part of the group leader who got everybody on the line? And what comments beyond it all worked fine do you have on the Vox system?
It never occurred. So the idea was great.
Was I asleep at the switch or something?
Yeah,
you enthralled me so much about the whole thing that I just asked a dumb question. But thanks for the presentation.
You're welcome. Yeah, you just muted me in that little place. And then I want you to know, everybody, if you're thinking about doing wine tours, whether you have a lot of experience or whether you haven't done any yet, I can tell you, after doing, 15 years of them and more than, a lot of people in a lot of shapes and sizes, regardless of the current post-fire and regardless of the current COVID and the post-COVID implications, the wine country is really a delightful experience for guests from anywhere in the world, because it's not just about the wine and the alcohol. It's about the culture, it's about the agriculture, it's about the flour, the chocolate, the cheese, the culinary, the people. So even though it's a little more complicated, it does require us to be very interactive and in tune with the guests, which is what we all bring to the party anyway. That's why we're in this crazy business. So I am very hopeful that as everything falls out and the dust settles, the wine country touring is still going to be an extraordinary place for tour guides who like this kind of touring to, how shall we say, master our craft. Cool. Hey, Roberto, I think if you think we should wrap up, let me do an invitation and then we'll do our thanks and acknowledgements to everybody and we'll be done.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So, hey, everybody, if you don't mind, I'm going to ask you to let me have your ear for just 3 or 4 more minutes. I want to invite you to something. It's a free invitation. You see, the conversation that we've had today about, you know, the questions, the who, what, when, where, why. That's the world that I live in. My wife and I are both educators. I love training and development, maybe a little bit more than I love guiding. So if you find yourself in the place where you would like to spend a few hours on a few acres in Glen Ellen, looking at grapes growing, checking out the cactuses, seeing the bamboo gardens, saying hi to the horses next door, sitting around the pool, watching the garlic grow, sitting on the deck, doing nothing but discussing our industry, talking about the craft of guiding. If you want to spend a couple of hours in a beautiful place, my wife Masako and I have 4 acres tucked away up here in Sonoma, Glen Ellen specifically, and we've had multiple teams of friends, colleagues, church-going friends of ours to come onto our property for 2 or 3 hours. The market is 2 minutes away by car. You could BYO everything. We could eat sandwiches, but it is a place that's designed to be constructive and hospitable. We're here to learn good things and chat about good things amongst one another, and we can talk about anything. So if you think you're an expert in bamboo, or at least you know a lot of bamboo, you will have a committed listening audience if you brought a few of your friends. We'll bring a few of ours. 6, 8, 10 people is not too many. We have a great place to be. You are always welcome to come visit, especially now in the next 6 or 8 weeks as everything settles. We have time, we have energy, we have a place for you to be, and we're right next to the Jack London State Park and right next to Benzinger. So you could drop in for a few hours, we could talk shop, and you could go on with your day and do fun things. So the door is always open.
That's lovely, Mark. I might take you on that invitation soon.
Amen.
And yes, so I don't know how to thank you, Mark, for this beautiful presentation that you gave us. You kept us entertained, and you brought in so much energy and so many details that we didn't know about, so much work to do behind the scene. So thank you again for being with us today. Anne Marie also, she sent me an email that right at the end of the conversation, her internet went down, so she wasn't able to say goodbye officially, although she was already done with the presentation. But she thanked everyone, and she invites everyone to visit the winery in Rutherford. And thank you everyone for listening and for being with us today. I think it was very educational, very informative. And if you have any other comment or question for Mark, this is your last chance. Anyone?
Mark looks like Mandy Patinkin, the guy from Homeland.
Why, thank you.
You look just like him. It's great. I thought I was talking to him right now.
So hey, everybody, have a beautiful Thanksgiving. Thank you for being with us. Thanks for sharing your ear. Have a great day. Love being your colleague. Bye now. Bye, Ellen. Bye.
Thank
Bye,
you,
Elaine.
everyone.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Sue. Bye, Babs.
Bye-bye.
Bye,
Bye,
Virginia.
Petra.
Thank
Jason.
you. Bye-bye.
Bye, Virginia. Hey, Jesse. Bye, David. Nice to be with you. Adios, y'all. Boiling down quick.